In the throes of despair, when the Israelites were under the oppressive rule of the Midianites, a hero was chosen, not from the ranks of the mighty, but from the least of the least, Gideon. This is a tale not just of heroism, but of the unlikely hero. Picture a time of great turmoil, when the Israelites were subjugated, their cries echoing through the valleys and the hills under the heavy hand of the Midianites. Their oppressors were relentless, leaving the Israelites in a state of constant fear and desperate for liberation. Enter Gideon, an ordinary man with an extraordinary destiny. A farmer by trade, Gideon belonged to the weakest clan in the tribe of Manasseh. He was the least in his family, a humble man, far from the image of the traditional warrior hero. He threshed wheat in secret, away from the watchful eyes of the Midianites, a testament to the desperate times they lived in. But the divine has a penchant for the extraordinary. It was in these unlikely circumstances that Gideon was selected, not for his strength or his valor, but for his potential. An angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." These words must have rung strange in Gideon's ears, for he felt anything but mighty. Yet that was the turning point. Gideon, the least of the least, was chosen to deliver the Israelites from the Midianites. His doubts were many, his fears palpable. He questioned, "How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." But the divine message was clear. "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." From a place of doubt and fear, Gideon was faced with a task that seemed insurmountable, yet he was not alone. And so begins the journey of Gideon, an unlikely hero chosen by divine intervention, a beacon of hope in the darkest times. Gideon, though chosen, was fraught with doubt. He sought confirmation of his divine appointment through a series of tests. The weight of his mission was heavy on his shoulders, and he needed to be sure that he was indeed chosen by God to lead his people to victory. First, he asked God for a sign. He placed a wool fleece on the ground and asked God to make the dew fall only on the fleece, leaving the ground around it dry. The next morning, he woke to find the fleece soaked with dew, while the ground around it was bone dry. This was a remarkable sign, but Gideon, like so many of us, needed more reassurance. And so, Gideon proposed a second test. This time, he asked for the opposite to occur. He wanted the fleece to stay dry while the ground around it was drenched with dew. And once again, God complied with Gideon's request. The next morning, Gideon found the fleece dry while the ground around it was wet with dew. In these tests, Gideon was not simply being obstinate or doubtful. He was seeking reassurance and confirmation of his divine mission. He was grappling with the magnitude of the task at hand and needed to be certain that he was not alone. He needed to know that he was indeed chosen by God and that God was with him. The response of God to Gideon's tests was not one of frustration or anger. Instead, God understood Gideon's need for reassurance and provided the signs he asked for. This reiterates the theme of faith and trust in divine guidance. It was a gentle reminder that even in our doubts and fears, God is patient and understanding. These tests were not just about confirming God's presence, but also about Gideon finding his faith. It was about understanding that faith is not about blind acceptance, but about questioning, seeking, and finding reassurance. In these tests, Gideon found his faith and confirmed his mission. He was ready to face the Midianites. The battle was looming, but the strategy was not one of numbers or might. It was a strategy of faith. As Gideon stared across the valley at the sea of Midianite tents, the gravity of the situation became all too real. Here was an army that outnumbered them 100 to 1, a force so great that it could swallow them whole. But Gideon did not falter, for he understood that the battle was not about the strength of arms, but the strength of faith. God had given Gideon a plan, a strategy so unconventional it could only come from the divine. He was to take a mere 300 men to face the Midianite army. Each man was to carry a torch hidden in a jar and a trumpet. No swords, no shields, just torches, jars, and trumpets. An army armed not with weapons of war, but with symbols of light, sound, and faith. Imagine the scene. 300 men on the cusp of an impossible battle, each man handpicked not for his prowess in battle, but for his faith and his courage. Each man understanding that their victory did not lie in their strength, but in their belief in God's power and promise. As they stood on the precipice of battle, torches hidden in jars, trumpets at the ready, they must have looked more like a band of musicians than an army. But therein lay the genius of the divine strategy. It was not about overwhelming the enemy with force. It was about startling them, confusing them, making them believe they were up against a force far greater than they were. It was a psychological battle before it was a physical one. In this strategy, every man had a role. Every man was important. It was a strategy of unity, where the success of one was the success of all. And at the center of it all was faith. Faith that God's plan was infallible. Faith that even in the face of overwhelming odds, victory was possible. With faith as their weapon, Gideon and his men stood on the precipice of an impossible battle. Into the heart of the night, armed with nothing but their faith and the promise of divine support, Gideon and his 300 men ventured. They were a tiny force, set against the vast multitude of Midian. But they carried with them an unshakable belief, a conviction that they were not alone and that they were the instruments of a higher power. In the pitch black of the night, they moved towards the enemy camp, each man carrying a simple clay jar with a torch inside. Then, at Gideon's signal, they shattered the jars, and the sudden blaze of 300 torches flared up against the darkness. The blare of trumpets echoed through the valley. The sight and sound struck terror into the hearts of the sleeping Midianites. Disoriented, the Midianites woke to a scene of chaos. In their fear and confusion, they turned on each other. The illusion of a vast attacking force, created by the piercing light of the torches and the thunderous sound of the trumpets, had thrown them into disarray. They fled, leaving their camp and possessions behind. Gideon's small band of warriors had not needed to engage in combat. The Midianites, in their panic, had defeated themselves. The power of their vast army had been rendered useless, not by the force of weapons, but by a brilliantly executed strategy and the strength of unwavering faith. This victory was a testament to the power of belief, to the strength that comes from having faith in something greater than oneself. It was a clear demonstration that numbers and might do not always determine the outcome of a battle. Sometimes it's the faith of a few that can turn the tide. And so, against all odds, the Midianites were defeated, not by the strength of an army, but by the faith of a few. A reminder that there is always hope, and even when we seem outnumbered and outmatched. A reminder that with faith, courage, and divine guidance, victory is always within reach. Victorious, Gideon returned. Yet the greatest victory was not against the Midianites, but against doubt and fear. The dust of battle had settled. The roars of victory echoed through the hills. Gideon, the unlikely hero, had returned. But the battlefield was not the only place where he had triumphed. He had waged a war within himself, a war against doubt and fear, and emerged victorious. The aftermath of the battle was a testament to Gideon's faith and courage. He had led an army of 300 against a mighty enemy, armed with merely trumpets, jars, and torches. His victory was miraculous, yes, but it was also a testament to his unwavering belief in divine guidance. His trust in the divine was his greatest weapon, his faith his strongest shield. Gideon's story left a lasting impact. It resonated through the generations, a beacon of hope for those grappling with their own Midianites. It's a reminder that our greatest battles are often fought within. It teaches us that doubt and fear are formidable foes, but with faith and courage, they can be defeated. The lessons of Gideon's story are timeless. They serve as a reminder of the power of faith, the strength of courage, and the importance of divine guidance. They remind us that we are not alone in our battles, that we are guided and protected in our struggles. Gideon's victory against the Midianites was a physical manifestation of his spiritual triumph. He stood tall, not just as a warrior, but as a man of faith. His story is not just about a battle won, but about a man who found his faith, faced his fears, and emerged victorious. Just as Gideon, you too can face your Midianites, whatever they may be. With faith, even the most insurmountable challenges can be overcome. If you're finding value in this video, we appreciate your support through subscribing and liking. Now, continue your journey.